So here we are, the big finish. And it's great to see you all. We really wanted to take the discussion to the next level as we come into the portion of the day where we really want to, as much as possible, focus on future potential, and in particular, focus on everything that you've heard on today about the model for internet governance, CIRA, the ideas for moving forward on economic development, digital literacy, but in particular, the governance model, what can be improved upon. We're going to be talking to you again in a few minutes about what can we do for the future, where do we need to improve specifically. If you've got those ideas, we want to capture them before you go home today. To help lead us into that discussion, we have Sally Wentworth with us. Sally joined the Internet Society, also known as ISOC, in May of 2009 as the Senior Manager of Public Policy and the Regional Manager for ISOC's North American Bureau. She has extensive experience working on Internet policy, both in the region and on a global level, and is the lead policy voice for ISOC throughout the region. Prior to joining ISOC, Sally was the Assistant Director for Telecommunications and Information Policy at the White House, where she was responsible for government-wide coordination and implementation of policies related to telecommunications and internet governance. From 1999 to 2007, she was the Principal Policy Advisor on Internet policy issues at the U.S. Department of State and participated in numerous global and regional policy discussions on Internet governance, including at the United Nations and the OECD. Sally holds a master's degree in International Political Economy from the Claremont Graduate University and a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from Westmount. Sally is based in the U.S. at Reston, Virginia. Welcome. It's a little cold, it's a little chilly up here, but we sure are glad you came. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much for the kind introduction. I realize I'm in a difficult position of standing at least somewhat between you and your weekend, so I'll try to be succinct in my remarks. As was noted, my objective here is to talk a little bit about how some of these internet governance discussions are playing out internationally, something that Byron Holland touched on earlier today, and talk a little bit about how the internet model fits into that, and leave you with an imperative that we can't take the model for granted. We can't take participation and multi-stakeholderism for granted, that these kinds of dialogues need to be nurtured and supported globally, regionally, and locally. First, I just want to thank CIRA for inviting me up here. This has been a really great event. I note the energy in the room. It's incredibly positive and collaborative, and I think this is really the kind of environment that is constructive to building a digital economy and building the kind of internet that we want to see continue to grow. Just a little bit first about the Internet Society. We're a global nonprofit organization. We're a cause-based organization devoted to the notion that the internet is good, and that the open development and evolution of the internet should be for all people. I think that's really been a theme that we've heard much of today. We see a future in which people everywhere can use the internet to improve their quality of life. This is based on open standards, on business practices, on government policies, on collaboration that really sustains the open and universally accessible internet as a platform for innovation, creativity, and economic opportunity. We were founded in 1992 by some of the internet pioneers you probably have heard of, Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn among them. We're the organizational home for the Internet Engineering Task Force and the Internet Architecture Board. These are some of the groups that work very hard to make the internet standards that allow for global connectivity around the world. We have over 100 organizational members. These are companies, other nonprofits, educational organizations, tens of thousands of individual members. And this will be my shameless plug. You can all join the Internet Society. It's free, and we welcome your participation. This is really, from our perspective, an opportunity to participate in the global dialogue. We also have 90 chapters worldwide. We have one in Canada, in Quebec. We would love to see more, and if that's something anybody's interested in, please do reach out to me. Our local chapters are really the way in which we take the global message of the open, universally accessible internet down to the local level, much of like what we're hearing here today and the regional consultations that have taken place leading to this event. And that's something that has proven to be a very important channel in countries and cities around the world. We also have regional bureaus throughout the world, and I represent our North American activities. Our strategic direction is focused around three main areas: enabling access, internetworks, and trust and identity. I'll just talk about each of those briefly. Our enabling access is much of what it sounds like, looking to advance internet development in emerging markets, and looking at the policy, technical, and regulatory issues that need to be solved and addressed in order to allow the internet to grow in some of those more difficult environments. Internetworks is focused on the overall health of the internet. Some of the things that we heard of today, the need to deploy IPv6. We've been very active in encouraging that on a global basis, and as was noted earlier, are sponsoring a World IPv6 Day in order to advance the momentum on that front. We also are working very heavily in the area of trust and identity, and of course the issue of access is very important, but people also need to trust the medium and need to be confident that their interactions are safe and secure and reliable and, as appropriate, private, so that more transactions and more communication can take place. So looking at where the internet is going, and I think our lunchtime conversation perhaps put this in a really valuable perspective, but we have 2 billion people connected today. We expect 4 billion more, obviously, to come online. This is going to create tremendous opportunity for the internet and certain challenges. We know that we think that the next billion users, or many of the next billion users, are going to come from developing countries. China is already well on its way to becoming the largest internet economy in the world. Countries like India and Brazil are going to add another 200 million users. And the fastest rate of growth is coming out of Africa, obviously starting from a smaller base. So this is going to change the face of the internet. This is going to change how it's used. It's going to change maybe even some of the governance models as different value systems come online. Some of the things that we'll start, we are already starting to see, this isn't going to happen in the future, we're already seeing a more multilingual internet to reflect the use of non-Western characters in the domain name space, to reflect the need and the desire of people to communicate in their own language online. The internet users will have different cultural and social values. And we're seeing this, and we have been seeing this for many years in the global policy debate, that as developing countries and new users come online, they have different demands, different expectations of the internet governance model. And we will have to, obviously bring those views into the mix. It's incredibly important. The next game-changing innovation is going to come from somebody's garage or living room that we haven't even thought of. And it's going to help solve local challenges and local issues. And we're already seeing some of the real innovative solutions coming out of the challenges that are happening in North Africa and the Middle East as people attempt to solve the communications problems that have emerged in those environments. Methods of accessing the internet are going to change. New technologies are going to be developed, different architectures that will help people solve some of the geographic or other challenges that they face in their countries. So what do we have to do to ensure that the internet that is so important to us, an open, accessible internet, also accommodates this new paradigm, these new users from new countries, and what do we need to do to ensure that internet governance remains participatory and multi-stakeholder? We have to ensure that the internet model, the key elements of the internet model that have led to the internet's success continue. This is user-centric, it's user-driven, it's empowering, and it thrives on human ingenuity, inventiveness, and curiosity. It's this notion of innovation without permission, the idea that I can come up with the next greatest idea and throw it out there and make it succeed. And we've had a lot of discussion about the best ways to do that here today. At the Internet Society, we talk a lot about the internet model, and the model itself is successful because of essentially the internet architecture. The internet architecture is open. This is shared global ownership. Somebody talked about the notion of many to many. There's no central control like we saw in prior forms of communication. It's built on open technical standards where anybody can participate to solve the biggest problems, to participate in the technical development. We have collaborative engagement models. Researchers, business, civil society, government all come together to identify opportunities, to solve problems, to drive the technology based on their expertise, based on what they want, what they can bring to the table. We have freely accessible processes for technology and policy development, many of which were touched on, and I'll talk about a bit of those today. And fundamentally, it's transparent and collaborative governance. I think one of the things that's so important is that no one group can sit in a room by itself and decide the future of the internet. The future of the internet is decided by all of us. It's decided by local communities figuring out how to best use it. It's decided by interactive communities across the globe sharing their ideas and their expectations. And the governance model reflects that collaboration, and that's something that is really fundamental to the internet, and it's something that has grown up as the internet has grown up and continues to grow up. I think, I hope that in the room there were distributed some papers that look like this, because this slide is absolutely impossible to see from where you're sitting. But this is really a picture to drive home the point about the internet ecosystem and how many organizations, it's a little bit of acronym soup here, but how many organizations and stakeholders are involved and engaged in making the internet work and making the governance model work. And what you see is folks from standards, from operations, network operators, users, education providers, capacity building, policymakers at the local, regional, and global level, naming and addressing. And these are all components, and within those there are other components that really come together and make the whole work. And sometimes I think it's useful, and you'll see on the back a little bit of the definitions of the acronym soup here, but I think sometimes it's useful to see it, even if you can't read it on the slide, to get a sense of just how many actors are engaged in this discussion and how much value they bring, and the importance for all of you of engaging with these groups as you have expertise and have thoughts and points of view to bring to bear. So as I said, this internet ecosystem is the organizations and communities that guide the operation, development of the technologies and the infrastructure of the internet. These organizations, it's important that they share certain common values, again, that rely on this collaboration, that depend upon another group doing its part and somebody else coming in and following on that and building upon that. And this is what has made it what it is today: broad participation, transparency, and dispersed ownership, no central control. Just a couple of the acronym soup just to really drive home the point. Standards bodies like the Internet Engineering Task Force, the World Wide Web Consortium, it was mentioned earlier, the organization ICANN and the Internet Assigned Names and Numbers Authority are all of these regional internet registries are all part of the technical underpinnings of the internet. And then on top of that, we have, in addition to that, we have international organizations, the United Nations, the OECD, APEC, a whole series of groups that really are engaged in making policies and driving global discussions about the internet. So that brings me to the topic of international internet governance. This is a discussion that's been going on now for almost a decade, certainly longer than that, but at the United Nations level, and culminated at a World Summit on the Information Society, first in 2003 in Geneva and 2005 in Tunis. And the idea was to develop a common vision and understanding of the information society and countries and stakeholders. The idea was that this was United Nations, but they're trying to find ways to bring in stakeholders into this discussion to develop what do we believe, what's important about the information society going forward. And one of the things that came out of that, there's wonderful declaration of principles and plans of actions that came out, but one of the key points was the importance of enhanced cooperation among stakeholders. There was a real recognition among everybody at the World Summit that more dialogue was needed, that we all have things to learn from each other, that countries can learn from other countries, that civil society has something to teach industry, that the technical community can really hear what policymakers are concerned about, and that discussion shouldn't stop at the end of the WSIS. And so they set up an Internet Governance Forum, which is a forum to continue that multi-stakeholder conversation. And that's been going on for 5 years now. And is really, I think, from the Internet Society's perspective, been a very fruitful discussion and a very fruitful forum for all kinds of groups to get together at a global level to talk about some of the very same issues that you're talking about here today. So issues of digital literacy, issues of empowerment, common values, common principles, the need for innovation, the need for development, people-centered development of the internet, are all things that have been really drilled down upon at the Internet Governance Forum, and which these kinds of regional forums are feeding into. So this isn't an isolated discussion that's happening here. This is a discussion that's happening in different regions, different countries around the world, and is culminating in the Internet Governance Forum. And we think it's an incredibly important opportunity for all stakeholders to come together to the extent that they're able to participate, and remote participation is a key part of this. I will note, and it was commented on earlier, that the future of the Internet Governance Forum is under discussion right now, actually as we speak, in Geneva, Switzerland. The Internet Governance Forum was given a 5-year mandate, and that 5 years is up, and the question is, what will the future Internet governance model look like? And this is where you see some of the tensions coming out between countries that have really internalized and accepted this multi-stakeholder approach, I think like we're seeing here in Canada, and countries that still really struggle with the idea that anybody can come together and come to the table to make the internet work. And what we're going to see play out, I think, and what I hope you will be engaged in and encouraging your government here in Canada is to see whether that multi-stakeholder model and approach at the United Nations level can persist. And we sincerely hope it can. And I know the government of Canada, alongside several others, has been very strong in promoting the future of that model on a global basis. And so we're hopeful that that will be the case. Just to close, to bring it together, the internet model, internet governance, is really, I think as Vint Cerf often says, it's a grand collaboration. That's how the internet, that's the genesis of the internet itself. and that's really what's led to its success. It's a network of networks. This is where how internet governance is rooted, based on open standards, reflecting the architecture, bottom-up, freely accessible technology and processes. But this has arisen, the grand collaboration began many, many years ago. We don't want to become complacent. We don't want to take it for granted. These kinds of discussions, as I think world events suggest, are not something to take for granted. This is an opportunity to engage. I think this has given you a very valuable beginning to a discussion here in Canada. And I think incredibly important that it happen at the local level. Like I said, Internet Society, through its chapters, tries to promote that local dialogue, that it happen nationally, that it happen internationally. If you want to see, and I hope these slides will be available, we've made a number of contributions and documents, one of which I circulated here, but many more on the Internet ecosystem and Internet governance, and we contribute regularly to these fora. And certainly our community helps inform our input. So the more you're part of our community, the more you can help inform our input, and we sincerely hope that you will. So with that, I will conclude, and thank you very much for your attention.